It didn't start in that conference room. It started in the quiet rewrites, small edits, subtle erasures, the kind you pretend not to notice because noticing would mean admitting something is rotting, slowly, politely, inside your own home. We live in Austin, private school, a campus that smells like money and cut grass, brick buildings with donor plaques, hallways lined with framed photos of smiling graduates who already look like CEOs. The kind of place where the word community really means inventory. And my family, was parked right in the middle of it, pretending we belonged. Colin is my stepson, 17, tall, sharp-eyed, quick with sarcasm. He used to call me Dad. Not often, not loudly, but he did. That word used to feel like a small pardon, like a permission slip to keep trying, like a hand reaching back for mine in the dark. Then it shifted. Not all at once. That would have been merciful. No, this was the slow kind of cruelty. The kind that's hard to defend yourself against because each individual moment looks too small to fight. He started calling me Tom. Not by accident. Not casually. Deliberately. Like he was testing the sound of it. Like he wanted to see how it landed. Tom's picking me up. Tom said I can't. Tom transferred the money. Tom. Not Dad. Not even my stepdad. Just my first name. A label that said, you are temporary. You are optional. You are outside the circle. At first I told myself it was teenage independence. A phase. A mood. A stupid little rebellion that would burn out and embarrass him later. But then his biological father came back. Mark. The name I hadn't heard spoken in our house in years. Suddenly everywhere. Like smoke seeping under a door. Mark didn't return like a man trying to fix what he broke. He returned like an actor chasing applause. He popped into their lives with dramatic entrances and gifts that made noise. Sneakers in glossy boxes. A watch that looked expensive but smelled like guilt. Promises said loudly enough for other people to hear. Colin saw the show. And the show worked. He began calling Mark his real dad. Not just when he was mad. Not just when he wanted something. He said it like a fact. Like a correction. Mark's my real dad. He'd say, glancing at me as if waiting for me to flinch. You're just, you know. He never finished the sentence because he didn't have to. The unfinished part hung in the air anyway. You're the guy Mom married. You're the checkbook. You're the background. Emily heard it. My wife. Colin's mother. At first, I expected her to shut it down. I expected her to do what a spouse does when a child crosses a line that cuts the foundation. But she didn't. She did something worse. She stopped reacting. Silence is a decision people pretend is neutral. It isn't. Emily's silence became the new rulebook of our house. Colin would be on the phone with Mark in the kitchen. Speaker on, laughter spilling like he wanted the whole room to hear. Yeah, Dad. Yeah. I miss you too. Dad. I'd stand at the counter, knife hovering over a cutting board, listening to a word I paid for but no longer owned. The sound of it made my stomach go tight, like my body understood the insult before my mind could build excuses around it. Emily would stir a pot and keep her eyes down. She didn't correct him. She didn't even glance at me. She moved through the moment like she was walking past a stain on the carpet. Something inconvenient that she hoped would fade if she ignored it long enough. That's when the first crack opened inside me. Not anger. Shame. Because I was still doing it. Still carrying everything like it was normal. Mortgage. Insurance. Utilities. Food. Repairs. The invisible work nobody claps for. The work that becomes your identity when you're the one who stays. And the school, God, the school. Private school tuition feels less like payment and more like tribute. You don't just pay. You prove you can pay. You prove you belong in the room. Colin had tutoring, summer programs, test prep, fees for sports, fees for uniforms, fees for experiences. Every time an email landed in our inbox with a due date and a polite tone, I opened my account and handled it. I became the quiet machine that kept his life running. It didn't matter if he slammed doors. It didn't matter if he rolled his eyes. It didn't matter if he called me Tom. Because the system still recognized my name. I told myself consistency would outlast volume. I told myself reliability would win. I told myself the truth always rises, eventually. Then Emily started erasing me in public. Photos of me began disappearing from her social media. Not with drama. Not with an announcement. Just gone. Old vacation pictures deleted. Family birthday posts cropped. My face missing. Replaced with throwback photos of her and Mark when Colin was little. Nostalgic captions. Soft lighting. The kind of posts that whisper maybe we should have never divorced. People liked them. Commented hearts. Told her she looked so happy. I watched it happen in silence because saying something felt pathetic. Like begging for evidence that I existed. And in the house my name kept shrinking. Tom. 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 Even Emily started doing it. Not always. But enough. Tom will take you. Tom's working late. Tom said no. She used to say, "Your dad," when she talked about me to him. It had been her gift to me. A small honor. A way of making my role real. She stopped. And the day she stopped, I understood something I didn't want to understand. I was being rewritten out of the story while I was still paying for the ink. The parent conference came in late fall. The school called it a community conference. Like it wasn't just a ritual of status and performance. That afternoon, the campus was crowded with parents in tailored suits and quiet perfume. People who smiled with their teeth but not their eyes. Teachers standing near tables of pamphlets, nodding like trained diplomats. The principal at the front, charming and confident, talking about values and leadership and family partnership. Family partnership. The phrase hit me like a joke told at a funeral. 3 days earlier, I had transferred $30,000. I remember the exact moment. Standing in my home office, email open, the tuition invoice glowing on my screen like a demand. I logged into my account. I typed the amount. I pressed confirm. $30,000. Clean. On time. Like always. I didn't tell Colin I'd done it. I never did. I didn't want praise. I didn't want him to feel like his education was a debt he owed me. I just wanted him to walk through doors without fear. So there I was in that conference room, with rows of chairs and soft lighting and the school's crest on a banner. Colin sat 3 rows ahead of me with Emily. He didn't sit beside me. That too had become normal. My presence was tolerated, not included. The principal invited students to speak about support systems, about gratitude, about the people behind the scenes. Colin stood up, tall, confident, 17 and already convinced he understood loyalty because he'd watched it performed like theater. He took the microphone. "I just want to thank my real dad, Mark," he said, voice bright, practiced. "He's always been there for me." A few polite nods. A few approving smiles. Parents murmuring like this was touching. Then Colin paused, turned his head, looked over the room, and his eyes landed on me. He smiled small, cold, like he'd been waiting for this moment. "And just to be clear," he added, voice steady, almost casual, "he's not my dad. He just pays. He's kind of an imposter." For a second, the room didn't understand. You could feel it. People processing whether they were supposed to laugh. A few awkward chuckles broke out. The safe kind. The coward kind. Then the laughter died. Because my face didn't change. Because I didn't play along. Imposter. The word landed clean. Surgical. I felt every eye shift toward me. The man in the back row. The one who looks like he belongs but suddenly doesn't. Emily didn't turn around. She didn't correct him. She didn't even flinch. That was the moment. Not the insult. Not the humiliation. Her silence. I stood up slowly. No shouting. No shaking. My heartbeat felt strangely calm. Like something inside me had gone numb. Like my body had decided it was safer not to feel. I walked forward. Past rows of parents who suddenly found the carpet fascinating. Past teachers who suddenly remembered they had papers to hold. Past Emily, who kept her gaze fixed ahead like she could erase what just happened by refusing to acknowledge it. The principal smiled, relieved at first. He thought I was going to save the room, smooth it over, make a light-hearted comment. Perform the role of the generous stepfather who takes a joke and keeps paying anyway. Instead, I looked at Colin, then at the principal, and I said evenly, clearly, if I'm just a wallet here, consider the wallet closed. Silence. Not polite silence. Heavy silence. The kind that presses on your ears. The kind where you can hear someone swallow from 3 rows away. A chair scraped. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." I took my phone out of my pocket, opened my banking app, found the scheduled tuition transfer for next semester. Already set up because that's what I do. I plan ahead, I cover gaps before they appear. And I canceled it. Right there. In front of them. The principal's smile collapsed. Teachers stared. Parents froze with their hands mid-clap that never came. I looked at the principal again and said, calm as a knife laid on a table, I won't fund a narrative where I'm an imposter. No drama. No speech. Just truth. Then I turned and walked out. The hallway felt longer than usual. My footsteps echoed against polished floors. The school's crest stared down from banners like a judgment. Behind me, the conference room stayed silent. For the first time in years, I wasn't carrying them. I was walking alone, and it felt steady, felt like a boundary, felt like waking up. The silence in that conference room didn't follow me out, chased me. I could feel it clinging to my back as I walked through the polished hallway, past the framed photographs of legacy families and scholarship donors. My shoes echoed against the marble like I was walking out of a courtroom after sentencing someone to prison. Maybe I had. Or maybe I had finally stopped sentencing myself. When I stepped outside, the Austin heat hit me like a slap. The sky was painfully blue. Parents lingered in small clusters near their SUVs, pretending nothing had happened. A few looked at me with curiosity. A few with judgment. Most with relief that it wasn't their family unraveling in public. I stood by my car and breathed. $30,000. 3 days ago. Imposter. Today. The math felt obscene. My phone buzzed before I even started the engine. Emily. I let it ring. Then again. Then a third time. I answered on the 4th. What are you doing? She hissed, her voice low and frantic. Have you lost your mind? No, I said. I found it. There was noise behind her. Murmuring. Footsteps. The hum of damage control. You embarrassed him, she snapped. I almost laughed. He embarrassed me, I replied. In front of his school. In front of you. He's 17, Tom. There it was again. Tom. Not he's our son. Not you're his father. Just my name stripped down and clinical. He meant his biological father, she continued, like she was explaining something obvious to a child. You're taking it too literally. Too literally. I had transferred $30,000. That was literal. I had sat through years of games, practices, late-night homework sessions. Literal. I had paid for braces for SAT prep, for the car he drove to school. Literal. But the insult? That was apparently symbolic. Harmless. If I'm just symbolic, I said calmly, then the money can be symbolic too. She went quiet. Don't do this, she finally said, softer now. You're overreacting. No, I was reacting for the first time. I ended the call before she could say anything else. Driving home, the past few months replayed in sharp fragments. Scenes I had ignored. Clues I had dismissed. Mark hadn't just reappeared casually. He had staged a return. He started showing up at Colin's basketball games. Loud. Animated. Clapping too hard. Yelling advice from the sidelines like he'd been there all season. Parents would glance at him, impressed by the enthusiasm. I'd be sitting 3 rows up, quiet, steady, like I always had. After the game, Mark would sweep Colin into a hug that looked rehearsed. That's my boy, he'd shout. My boy. Then he'd hand him something. A new pair of shoes. A gift card. A flashy watch. Performance. He never paid for the team fees. Never covered the travel expenses. Never signed a single school form. But he made noise. And noise wins in a teenager's heart. I remember one night in particular. Colin came home with that watch on his wrist. holding it up to the light like it was proof of something sacred. "Dad got it for me," he said. "Dad," not looking at me, not accidentally. Mark's gifts were visible. Mine were structural. Invisible beams holding up a house nobody noticed until it collapsed. I started to see the pattern. Mark would take Colin out for dinner. Some expensive place downtown where lighting is dim and conversations feel important. They'd post photos, smiling, shoulder to shoulder, captioned with words like, "Always proud of you," and "Blood is forever." Emily liked those posts. I noticed that too. One evening I came home early from work. The house was quiet except for laughter from the living room. Colin was on FaceTime with Mark. The call was on speaker. "Yeah, Dad," he was saying. "Tom handled tuition already." There was a pause. Then Mark's voice, faint but sharp. "Good. That's what he's good for." They both laughed. I stood in the doorway long enough to know it wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a script. I walked away before they saw me. That night I lay in bed next to Emily and stared at the ceiling. "Is Mark paying for anything?" I asked quietly. She hesitated just long enough. "He's trying to be involved," she said. That wasn't an answer. "Is he contributing?" Another pause. "He doesn't have what you have." There it was. The hierarchy. Mark had blood. I had money. And somewhere along the way, those roles became currency in a competition I didn't know I was in. Colin didn't see who paid the mortgage. He didn't see who renewed the insurance. He didn't see who stayed up comparing college financial packages late at night, calculating what we could afford without taking loans that would strangle us later. He saw the man who made noise. He saw the man who showed up occasionally with gifts and dramatic speeches. He saw the show. He never saw the stage. And I built the stage. After the conference, the game became obvious. Mark had been building to that moment, feeding Colin a narrative where I was temporary, transactional, replaceable. "You're almost 18, I once overheard him say. "Soon you won't have to pretend." As if the years under my roof were theater. When I got home that afternoon, Emily was already there. Colin wasn't. Probably still at school, dealing with the fallout. She was standing in the kitchen when I walked in. "What did you do?" she asked again, but this time there was less anger and more calculation in her eyes. "I closed the wallet," I said. "You can't just revoke tuition like that." "I can." And I did. She ran a hand through her hair, pacing. "Mark can't cover that. Then maybe he shouldn't let his son call other men imposters." She stopped. "This isn't about Mark. It's entirely about Mark." I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in months. She wasn't shocked by Colin's words. She was shocked by my response. That's when I understood something that hurt more than the insult. They had expected me to absorb it, to smile, to keep paying, to stay quiet, the dependable one, the wallet with a pulse. Colin came home an hour later. He didn't look ashamed. He looked annoyed. "What's your problem?" he asked as soon as he walked in. No greeting, no hesitation. "My problem," I repeated. "Yeah, the principal called Mom. You made a scene." I stared at him. "You called me an imposter." He shrugged. "It's not that deep. I was just clarifying." "Clarifying? You clarified that I just pay." "Well, you do." There it was. Clean. Simple. No anger in his voice. Just entitlement. I felt something settle inside me then. Not rage. Not even sadness. Clarity. "You think tuition pays itself?" I asked. He rolled his eyes. "That's not the point." "It is the point." "No, the point is you're not my real dad. Why are you so obsessed with the title?" I stepped closer. "I'm not obsessed with the title. I'm obsessed with the responsibility." He frowned. "You want the freedom to reject me publicly," I said evenly. "But you still expect the benefits privately. That's not how it works." "You're right," I said. "It isn't." Emily stepped between us like a referee. "Enough," she snapped. "We'll figure this out calmly." But there was nothing calm left to figure out. I turned to Colin one last time. If I'm just a wallet, I said quietly, consider it closed. This time he didn't laugh. Because I wasn't in a conference room. I was in my house. And for the first time, he understood I meant it. The email from the school arrived 48 hours later. Subject line, urgent, tuition status notice. I was at my desk when it came through. Mid-morning. Sunlight cutting across the hardwood floor. Coffee going cold beside my keyboard. The house was quiet in that artificial way it gets when everyone is pretending nothing is wrong. I opened it. Polite language. Corporate tone. Deadlines highlighted in bold. The scheduled tuition transfer had been revoked. The upcoming semester required confirmation of funds within 5 business days. Failure to remit payment would result in suspension of enrollment and possible forfeiture of placement. Possible forfeiture. They didn't threaten. They informed. Private schools don't beg. They replace. I closed the laptop slowly. 5 days. That was the cost of an imposter. By the afternoon, the phone calls started. First, the school office. I let it go to voicemail. Then Emily. I answered that one. They called me, she said, breath tight. They said there's been some kind of banking error. No error, I replied. Silence. You're actually doing this, she said. I already did. You're going to ruin his future over a word? I stared at the wall across from me. At a framed photo of the 3 of us from years ago. Colin between us, smaller, smiling. Back when he still called me Dad without checking who was listening. I'm not ruining anything, I said calmly. I'm stepping out of a role I was told I don't have. Her voice sharpened. Mark cannot cover this. There it was again. Not please. Not I'm sorry. Not even that hurt. Just logistics. I'm aware, I said. Then what is the plan? She demanded. There isn't one, I answered. Not for me. That evening, Colin came home earlier than usual. He didn't slam the door this time. He walked in fast, movements tight, jaw set like someone who had just received news he didn't like but still believed it was negotiable. They're serious, he said. I was sitting at the kitchen table reviewing monthly statements I no longer needed to justify. Yes, I replied. They said if it's not paid by Friday, I can't start next semester. Yes. He stared at me like I had just confessed to a crime. You can't let that happen. I folded the paper in front of me, set it down neatly. You said I'm not your dad. That's not what this is about. It is exactly what this is about. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing. I was just being honest. And so am I. His voice cracked slightly. Not from guilt, from panic. I've already picked my classes. I've got commitments. What am I supposed to do? I held his gaze. Call your real dad. The words landed heavy between us. He didn't move for a moment. Then he pulled out his phone. I watched him step into the living room. I could hear everything. The house carries sound differently when tension fills it. He dialed. It rang longer than usual. Finally, Mark answered. Hey, champ. Champ. I could almost see Colin straighten at the sound of it. Dad? Colin said, voice tight now, stripped of confidence. There's a problem. A pause. The tuition thing. Tom canceled it. Tom. Not even in crisis did I get a title. Another pause. Longer this time. What do you mean he canceled it? Mark's voice sharpened slightly. He said if he's just a wallet, then it's closed. Silence. I imagined Mark processing the situation. Imagined him calculating. That's extreme, Mark finally said. But look, I'm in the middle of something right now. Let me call you back. No, Dad. They need payment by Friday. Friday? Mark repeated, buying time. Yeah, or I lose my spot. Another silence. Well, Mark exhaled slowly. You know things have been tight lately. Tight. I had heard that word before. It's the word people use when they mean absent. I can maybe help with part of it, Mark continued, voice lowering. But 30 grand? That's not realistic. Not realistic. I leaned back in my chair. Colin's voice shifted. The edge disappeared. But you said. I said I'd always be there for you. Mark interrupted smoothly. That doesn't mean I can just write huge checks out of nowhere. That's what he does. Not my name. Just a category. That's what he does. I almost smiled. Colin stood frozen in the living room. His back was to me, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. So what am I supposed to do? He asked quietly. Talk to him, Mark replied. He's emotional right now. He'll calm down. Guys like that always do. He won't throw away all that money over pride. Guys like that, predictable, weak, financially reliable. He won't risk looking bad, Mark added. There it was, the assumption that I would fold to protect an image. I gotta run, Mark said quickly. We'll figure something out. The call ended. Colin stood there, staring at his phone. He didn't turn around immediately. When he did, his face looked different, less certain, less protected. Well? I asked. He swallowed. He said he'll see what he can do. How much? He hesitated. He can't cover it. The air in the room shifted. Not dramatically, not theatrically, just quietly. Reality had entered. Emily walked in from the hallway, eyes red. What did he say? She asked. Colin didn't answer right away. He said he can't pay all of it, he muttered. Emily closed her eyes briefly, not in surprise, in confirmation. The school called again the next morning. This time they left a voicemail that wasn't as polished. They needed confirmation. They had other applicants on the wait list. They required clarity to maintain enrollment numbers. Clarity. The principal emailed me personally by noon. He used my first name. Warm tone. Concerned language. Tom. I'm sure this is a misunderstanding. It wasn't. I responded with one sentence. There is no misunderstanding. Within days, the pressure built. Emily started making frantic calls, financial aid offices, payment plan coordinators, even her parents. Pride dissolves quickly when invoices arrive. Mark called once more. Not to me. To Colin. This time the conversation was shorter. I can maybe wire 5,000, Mark said. That's it. I've got obligations too. 5,000. Against 30. Against years. Can you talk to him? Colin asked. A pause. I don't want to get in the middle of your household drama, Mark replied carefully. That's between you and your mom. And just like that, the real dad stepped aside. No grand gesture. No rescue. Just a man unwilling to fund the narrative he helped create. By Thursday night, the house felt like a pressure chamber. Emily was pacing. Colin was quieter than I'd ever seen him. I sat at the table again, calm. Not because I enjoyed it, because I finally understood my role had always been conditional. And now it was gone. Friday morning, the final notice arrived. Payment required by 5 p.m. or enrollment suspended. Colin came into the kitchen slowly. He didn't argue. He didn't posture. He looked smaller. They're not bluffing, he said. No, I replied. He stood there for a long time. Then he asked very quietly, Are you really going to let this happen? I met his eyes. I'm not letting anything happen, I said. I'm letting the truth stand. The truth was simple. Mark could perform, but he could not provide. And for the first time in his life, Colin was seeing the difference. I didn't feel triumph. I felt something colder, distance, because realization doesn't automatically restore respect. And respect, once broken publicly, doesn't regenerate on demand. By 5 p.m., no payment was sent. The school's confirmation email arrived at 5:12. Enrollment suspended pending financial resolution. Colin stared at the screen. Emily sat down slowly. The stage lights were off. The audience had gone home, and the sponsor had stepped away. For the first time, they were standing without me. And now the question wasn't whether I was an imposter. The question was who was still standing beside them when the applause stopped. The house changed after the suspension email. Not loudly, not violently, just hollow. Colin stopped pacing, stopped arguing. The anger drained out of him like someone had pulled a plug. What remained was something quieter, unfamiliar. Emily moved through rooms with her phone glued to her ear, whispering, negotiating, repeating phrases like, temporary issue, and we're working on it. Her voice carried the tremor of someone who realized reputation was slipping through her fingers. I didn't interfere. I went to work. I paid the bills that were mine. I cooked dinner when I was hungry, but I no longer carried them. 3 days after the suspension, a letter appeared on my desk. Handwritten. Collins. He didn't hand it to me directly. He left it there sometime in the afternoon, like a confession slipped under a door. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. The handwriting was rushed, uneven. Tom, not Dad. I know you're angry. I messed up. I shouldn't have said that at school. I wasn't thinking. I was trying to impress Mark. He's been around more lately, and I guess I wanted him to see I'm loyal. I paused there. Loyal. The word felt heavy. I didn't mean you're just a wallet. I know you've done a lot. You've always shown up. Games. Doctor appointments. Helping me with math even when I was being a jerk about it. The words blurred for a second. Not from tears. From exhaustion. I confused loud with reliable. I guess I thought blood meant something automatic. But when I needed help this week, he didn't know what to say. There it was. The realization. You've always been the one who's actually there. I see that now. I just didn't think before I spoke. I'm sorry. Sorry. A simple word. Too simple. I folded the letter carefully. It wasn't a bad apology. It just came after a public humiliation that couldn't be erased with ink. That evening, Collins stood in the doorway of my office. He didn't step inside. Did you read it? He asked. Yes. Silence stretched between us. I meant it, he added. I looked at him. Really looked at him. The arrogance was gone. In its place was uncertainty. The kind that comes when illusions collapse. I believe you, I said. His shoulders loosened slightly. Hope flickered across his face. But hope isn't restoration. Then, can we fix this? He asked. There it was. Not, can I earn back your respect? Not, how do I make this right? Can we fix this? As if it were a broken appliance. I leaned back in my chair. You didn't just insult me, I said quietly. You redefined me. In front of a room full of people. In front of your school. In front of your mother. He swallowed. I know. No, I corrected gently. You know it caused consequences. That's not the same thing. His jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. I spent years building something, I continued. Not just financially, emotionally. I chose to show up when I didn't have to. I chose to stay. That wasn't automatic. He nodded, eyes fixed on the floor. And in one sentence, you told me I was pretending. I was wrong, he said quickly. Yes, I replied. You were. The word landed heavier than I intended. He looked up at me then, and I saw something close to fear. What happens now? He asked. Fair question. Emily entered before I could answer. She stood beside him, close enough that her shoulder almost touched his. We can figure this out, she said softly. You've both said your piece. My piece. Like this was an argument about curfew. I'm not negotiating my dignity, I said evenly. She flinched slightly at that. No one is asking you to, she replied. That's exactly what you were asking, I said. You just didn't call it that. Silence. Emily's eyes filled, but there were still no apologies in them. Only fear. The school is offering a short extension, she said quickly. If we can make a partial payment. The word hung there. How much? I asked. 10,000, she said. To hold his place. $10,000 for the privilege of being reconsidered. I thought about the letter on my desk. About the conference room. About the word imposter echoing through polished walls. I'll pay the final month of the current term, I said slowly. What I already committed to. Nothing more. Emily's face tightened. That won't be enough. I know. Collins stepped forward then. I'll get a job, he said quickly. I'll transfer schools if I have to. He stopped. I waited. I don't want you out of my life, he finished quietly. That was the first sentence that felt honest. Not about money, about absence. But here's the thing about boundaries. Once you draw them, you can't erase them without teaching everyone they were negotiable. I'm not disappearing, I said. I'm changing roles. His expression flickered with confusion. I'm not your sponsor anymore, I clarified. And I'm not your emotional punching bag. If you want a relationship with me, it will be built on respect, not obligation. He nodded slowly. And if I call you Dad? He asked, voice barely above a whisper. The question cut deeper than the insult had. You don't get to use that word as currency, I replied. If you say it, it has to mean something, not just when things fall apart. Tears welled in his eyes, but he didn't let them fall. I understand, he said. Maybe he did. Maybe he didn't. Understanding in a moment of crisis is fragile. Over the next week, I did exactly what I said. I paid the final month of tuition. No more. No joint transfers. No future semesters. I removed my name from joint savings accounts that were designated for education. I separated finances methodically, quietly. Emily watched me do it. Is this really necessary? She asked one night as I filled out paperwork. Yes. You're tearing us apart. No, I said calmly. I'm refusing to hold something together by myself. She didn't argue, because she knew. The truth is simple. Love isn't a subscription service. You don't auto-renew it while someone calls you an imposter. 2 weeks later, I moved into a small apartment across town. Not dramatically, not angrily, just deliberately. I left the house keys on the kitchen counter, took my clothes, my documents, the few framed photos where I still existed. Colin stood in the doorway as I carried the last box out. I'm not choosing him, he said suddenly. I never was. I know, I replied. But you still left. Yes. He struggled with that. I thought realizing it would fix it, he admitted. Realization doesn't erase impact, I said. He nodded slowly. Will you come to my games? He asked. If you invite me, I said. And if you mean it. He swallowed hard. I do. Maybe he did. Maybe this was the beginning of something different. But it would not be built on guilt. As I drove away, I didn't feel victorious. I felt lighter, because for the first time I wasn't paying to prove I belonged. I was standing on my own terms. And here's the question that stays with me. If someone calls you an imposter while you're carrying their world, do you keep carrying it to prove them wrong? Or do you set it down and see who still stands beside you?